Before we begin this chilling story, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more terrifying tales like this. Your support is crucial for us to continue bringing you the darkest mysteries and most disturbing stories. Now get ready, because what you're about to hear might change the way you see what lurks beneath the earth and above it. I had never believed in stories about haunted farms, strange happenings, or anything beyond what could be explained. I was a man of logic, a realist. My name is Marcos, and until last year, I had lived most of my life as a caretaker on small farms scattered across Brazil. But one call would change everything. It all started when I was recommended to a job at a remote farm in the interior of Mato Grosso. The owner was looking for someone to take care of the property while his family decided whether to sell it or keep it. I had heard about the place before, a vast estate, abandoned for years, where rumors of strange occurrences had been whispered in the nearby town. But I had a reputation for getting things done, and the money offered was enough to give me a fresh start after leaving my last job in Goiás. I wasn't interested in the stories, just the opportunity. So I took the offer. The day I arrived was gray, with the sky hanging heavy, as if the weather had absorbed the land's secrets. The road leading to the farm was long, winding, and isolated. Along the way, the cornfields on either side stretched out, tall and unmoving, like silent sentinels guarding some ancient truth. The farm itself looked like something out of a forgotten era. The house, large and made of dark wood, was boarded up. It stood in the middle of a vast expanse of land, and as I drove past, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the silence. The caretaker's house was smaller, situated behind the main building. I was told it was a modest, temporary setup until I got accustomed to the place. The door creaked as I opened it, and the air inside was thick with dust and mildew. The scent of rotting wood and stagnant air made me feel like I had stepped into a forgotten world, one that time itself had abandoned. The first few days were uneventful. I checked the fences, tended to the few remaining animals, and made sure the place was in decent condition. But there was something odd about the land. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. At night, the wind would howl, but it wasn't like any wind I had heard before. It carried a sound, a whisper, faint but constant. I dismissed it as the rustling of the trees or my own imagination playing tricks on me. But on the fourth night, everything changed. I woke up to a strange noise, a scratching sound, soft but persistent. I sat up, listening. It came from the window. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way cautiously to the window, but when I opened the shutters there was nothing. Just the cornfields stretching out into the darkness. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that my nerves were getting the better of me. But then I noticed something. A trail of footprints. Small, muddy, barefoot prints leading from the edge of the cornfield right up to the window where I stood. I checked the house, locked every door and window, and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept hearing faint whispers, as if the wind itself was speaking to me. At one point I thought I heard my name, but I convinced myself it was just my mind playing tricks. The next day I tried to forget about it. I went about my work, feeding the animals, walking the fields. But the whispers didn't stop. They were always there, carried by the wind, soft and unintelligible, like a conversation just out of reach. Then I found something. Behind the barn, hidden under a pile of old straw, was a strange bundle. It looked like a bundle of corn husks, but when I moved it aside I found something much more unsettling. Bones. Not just any bones, but human bones scattered around in a circle. At the center of the circle was an old, tattered cloth with something written in what looked like blood. It was a warning, though I couldn't make out the exact words. I thought about leaving. But something kept me there, an inexplicable pull, as if the land itself had laid claim to me. That night, the wind grew louder, the whispers sharper. I locked myself in the small bedroom and tried to sleep, but the air was thick with unease. Around midnight, I heard the unmistakable sound of something scratching at the door. My heart raced. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly approached the door, but before I could open it, the sound stopped. When I finally opened the door, I was greeted by the sight of something I will never forget. The cornfield outside was alive with movement. Shadows shifted, darting between the stalks. I couldn't make out what they were, but I could feel them, watching me, waiting for something. I slammed the door shut and bolted it. But it was too late. The whispers had grown louder, now accompanied by a low, guttural growl. I felt a chill in my bones, a presence outside that I could not see but that I knew was there. The next day I explored the house. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed answers. The walls creaked, the floors groaned under my weight, and everything felt wrong. In the attic I found a dusty chest. Inside was a collection of journals and old photographs. One photograph caught my attention. It was of the farm taken many years ago with a group of people standing proudly in front of the house. But there was something off about it. The people, smiling, happy, had eyes that were unnaturally dark. Empty. Hollow. I flipped through the pages of the journals, each one more disturbing than the last. The previous owner had written about strange events, animals dying without cause, crops failing, and more disturbingly, the whispers. The whispers that came from the fields, from the earth itself. He described how, over time, the whispers had grown stronger, more insistent, until they could no longer be ignored. In one of the last entries, the man spoke of an offering to the land to appease whatever it was that had claimed the farm. The last entry was simple and chilling. They want blood. They want to plant it in the soil. We are the harvest. I dropped the journal. My mind raced. This wasn't just a farm. It wasn't just bad luck or bad weather. Something ancient, something dark had taken root here. That night, I went to bed early, trying to sleep before the whispers could return. But when I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of the farm's past, images of people kneeling in the fields, offering up something to the earth. A child's cry. The sound of something being dragged across the ground. I woke up to the sound of scraping at the window again. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my things and rushed to the door, but when I opened it, I found myself standing face to face with a figure, tall, dark, and cloaked in shadow. Its eyes glowed a faint red, watching me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. I backed away, but it was already too late. The field around me seemed to come alive, the corn twisting and turning, and I could hear voices in the distance calling my name. I ran. I ran until I could no longer hear the whispers, until the shadows faded behind me. I don't know what happened to the farm, to the land, to the people who once lived there. But I know one thing for sure: sometimes the land doesn't let go. Sometimes it takes what it wants. And when it does, it doesn't give it back. My name is Joanna. I'm 34, a veterinarian by trade, and most of my work involves large livestock, cattle primarily. Over the years, I've worked on dozens of farms across the country. I've seen disease outbreaks, strange infections, behavioral anomalies. But what I experienced last year in the southern interior of Brazil defies explanation. It's the kind of thing you don't talk about in conferences or write about in journals. It's the kind of thing you bury and hope never to see again. It all started with a call. A large property, untouched for years, was being reactivated. The family that owned it, old landowners with deep roots, had plans to rebuild the herd, resume dairy and meat production. They hired new hands, rebuilt the corrals, restored the pastures. But something was wrong. The cattle were behaving strangely. The workers were uneasy. The local vet had resigned after a week without explanation. They needed someone experienced. Someone skeptical. Someone not easily scared. That was me. The first thing that struck me when I arrived was the silence. Not just the rural quiet you expect far from cities. This was different. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes your skin tighten. The air felt heavy still. The kind of atmosphere that makes animals pause and humans instinctively lower their voices. The main house was old but well preserved, recently cleaned and refurnished. I would be staying there alone. The workers lived in a separate area, several kilometers away, near the toolshed and grain silos. That isolation didn't bother me. I've spent many nights alone on properties far more remote than this one. What did bother me was the herd. From the first moment I saw them, something felt off. About 200 head of cattle, healthy by all standards. But they were completely silent. No mooing, no calls between mothers and calves. They just stood there, clustered together as if waiting. Their eyes were wrong, not sick, not damaged, just blank. Empty. And none of them, not one, would lift their head. I tested it. Walked through the field with feet in hand, making noise, clapping. They'd move, sure. They'd eat. But their heads remained down. Their eyes never glanced upward. I could practically scream and they'd just flinch, never breaking their downward gaze. I knelt in front of one large bull and gently lifted its chin. It resisted, but I insisted. As soon as its eyes caught a glimpse of the open sky, it shuddered violently, let out a strange low breath and collapsed. Dead. I performed a field necropsy. There was no sign of trauma. The internal organs were pristine, except the heart. It looked burnt, as if it had been struck by lightning from the inside. That night I couldn't sleep. At around 1 a.m. I heard footsteps on the roof. Light, careful steps like a barefoot child walking above me. I stayed still. I listened. They crossed from one side of the house to the other, then stopped right above my bed. And then, breathing. Slow, raspy breathing through something thin and long like a flute. It lasted nearly 5 minutes. Then silence. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I walked the entire perimeter of the property, looking for tracks, damage, anything that might explain what I'd heard. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of tampering. The roof was undisturbed. Not even a broken tile. It made no sense. I started to question myself. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe I was just worn out. But then I visited the herd again. They were in the same position. Heads low. Silent. But now there were changes. 3 calves had gone missing. No signs of escape. The fence was intact. The gate was locked. The workers hadn't seen anything. It was as if the animals had been erased. Later that day I found something near the south edge of the pasture. A strange depression in the grass, almost circular. The grass there was flattened, slightly scorched, and in the center the soil was hard as stone. It wasn't just dry, it was baked. As if something impossibly hot had hovered there for hours. I crouched down, touched the ground, and instantly pulled my hand back. It was warm. Not sun warm, machine warm. Like residual heat from an engine that had long since vanished. That evening I confronted one of the older workers, Benedito. He was in his 60s, quiet, hard-eyed. He had been with the estate for over 4 decades. If anyone knew what was happening, it was him. At first he denied everything. But when I mentioned the missing calves and the heat patch in the ground, something in him broke. He pulled out a flask, drank deeply, and finally said, "They see us when we look at them." "Who?" I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead he told me a story. Years ago, when he was still young, a strange light appeared over the fields during the dry season. It wasn't lightning or a helicopter. It hovered, completely silent. At first the animals panicked. But over time they adapted. They learned. And one by one they stopped looking up. "They understood," he said. "Better than us." I asked him what the light was, what it meant. He just said, "They watch. They choose. And sometimes, they take." That night, I dreamt of cattle walking in slow circles, eyes gouged out, still somehow alive. In the center of the dream stood a tall figure, humanoid but wrong. Arms too long, head too narrow, skin pale like bone. It pointed at me with fingers like twigs, and when I turned to run, the ground beneath me pulsed like a heartbeat. I woke up gasping. The next morning I found another animal dead. Same cause. Heart burned. I contacted the university's veterinary department, asking them to analyze the samples. I sent blood, tissue, images of the heart damage. A week later they called me, confused. There was no bacterial or viral infection. No toxins. No evidence of cardiac trauma. But somehow the heart tissue showed microfractures, as if shattered from within by extreme pressure. The day after that call, a cow gave birth. But the calf wasn't right. It was alive, but blind. Its eyes were fully developed, but the sockets were sealed shut by a thin layer of skin. It whimpered softly, then violently thrashed in the hay. It didn't survive the night. I performed an autopsy. Its organs were twisted. Its ribs were folded inward, like it had been molded by something that didn't understand how bones worked. And carved into the inside of its skull, deep, deliberate, and precise, was a symbol. A perfect circle with 3 slashes inside it. There's no natural explanation for that. I didn't sleep for the next 2 nights. The footsteps on the roof returned. Louder. Faster. Sometimes they circled the house. Other times they stopped abruptly, only to resume moments later as if whoever, or whatever, was up there was trying to test my nerves. I kept the lights on. It didn't help. I called Benedito again. He answered with a whisper. "Don't fight it. Just don't look up." The next day I made a decision. I needed proof. I couldn't explain what was happening with logic, so I would document it. I set up motion-triggered cameras around the pasture, one at each corner of the fence line, and another directly above the strange heat-blasted circle I had found. I also mounted one facing the corral from my bedroom window. If anything moved during the night, I would see it. I waited. The cattle were restless that evening. They shifted more than usual, snorting and backing away from certain spots in the field, as if something invisible was pressing against them. But still they refused to look up. At around midnight, I sat with a thermos of coffee and stared at the camera feeds. All 4 views showed the herd standing in eerie silence. But at exactly 12:47 a.m., one of the feeds flickered. The camera aimed at the scorched circle froze, then crackled to static. A second later the others followed. The screen went black. Then the lights in the house dimmed. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed my flashlight and stood by the window. Outside I saw nothing, just the dim outline of the pasture under the moonlight. But then I heard it. A low hum like a distant engine or electrical transformer, vibrating through the air. The cattle began to shift violently, some pressing their heads against the ground, others staggering in tight circles. And then came the beam. From somewhere above, though I never saw a source, a wide column of bluish-white light fell onto the center of the field. The cattle began to scream. Not moo scream. Shrill, unnatural. Some collapsed immediately. Others froze mid-step. Then one by one they began to rise into the air. Slowly their bodies ascended, twisting, twitching, hooves flailing helplessly. I counted 7 of them before the light vanished and they were gone. No sound. No explanation. The power returned 30 seconds later. The cameras rebooted. But when I checked the recordings they had all stopped at exactly 12:47 a.m., resuming at 12:52. 5 full minutes erased. The next morning I walked the field. There were no tracks. No blood. No signs of panic. Just an unnatural emptiness where the missing cattle had once stood. I was done pretending. I called the university again. This time I told them everything, what I'd seen, what I'd heard, what the cameras had missed. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then the voice said, "You need to leave. Now." But I couldn't. Something in me had already changed. I had become part of this place. Part of whatever was happening. And deep down I think I knew, I wasn't just observing it. I was being observed too. That evening I tried something reckless. I took a chair out to the center of the field, near the circle, and sat down. I tilted my head back and stared up at the sky. The cattle around me grew frantic. They ran from the circle. They mooed for the first time since I arrived. It was a sound of warning, of desperation. And then I saw them. Not one, not two, but dozens of shapes. Black silhouettes blotting out the stars. They hovered, motionless, high above. I couldn't see their details, just outlines. Wingless. Seamless. They didn't move like machines. They floated like thoughts. Suddenly a sharp pain shot through my eyes. I fell to the ground, clutching my face. My vision blurred. When I opened my eyes again I couldn't see the sky. Not because it wasn't there, but because something in me had changed. My mind refused to register it. A filter had been applied. A defense mechanism. I had looked too long. When I crawled back to the house I found every mirror inside shattered. Every reflective surface, cracked. Even the screen of my phone was splintered. I hadn't broken them. Something else had. And carved into the front door, in that same unnatural symbol I had found inside the calf's skull, were 3 new words. You looked up. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. Something had shifted inside me. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was like my thoughts were being rearranged. I'd catch myself staring at blank walls for minutes at a time, blinking slowly, hearing soft tones I couldn't explain. My memories became unreliable. I'd find notes written in my handwriting that I didn't remember writing. Diagrams. Symbols. Coordinates. And always the phrase, "Don't look up." But I had already looked. And something had looked back. The workers stopped coming. The last to leave was Benedito. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked past the house without a word, dragging his bags down the dirt road. I watched from the window as he reached the edge of the property line, paused, then whispered something to the air and disappeared into the forest. That night I lit every candle I had. The electricity was unreliable now, flickering and dying without warning. Even battery-powered lights seemed weaker, as if something around me absorbed energy. I didn't sleep. Just after midnight I heard them again. Footsteps. But this time they weren't on the roof. They were inside. I sat frozen on the floor, back against the wall, holding a fireplace poker like a weapon. The sound of footsteps grew louder, closer, but the hallway remained empty. Then I saw them. Shadows that didn't belong. Shapes flickering at the edges of perception. When I turned my head they vanished. When I looked straight ahead they returned, closer. My ears rang with static. One of the bedroom doors opened slowly, creaking in that deliberate way that only happens in nightmares. From the darkness stepped a figure. Tall, impossibly thin, its skin like translucent parchment stretched over bone. Its face was blank, no eyes, no mouth. Just smooth skin and 3 red slashes where the eyes should have been. It didn't move like a living thing. It glided. And it wasn't alone. Another came from the kitchen. Then another. Until the room was full of them, standing still, watching me without eyes. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred again and I collapsed to my knees. That's when they touched me. Not with hands, but with thought. They didn't speak. But I heard them. Not in words. In symbols. in pulses, in truths I wasn't meant to understand. They showed me a sky without stars, a planet wrapped in silence, a species of watchers who had long ago stopped speaking because everything they needed to say could be transmitted through thought alone. They drifted between worlds, studying, collecting, reshaping life like an artist rearranging a broken sculpture. And they had come here. Long before us. Long before language or fire. They were buried beneath us, above us, around us. Waiting. And now, something in me belonged to them. I don't remember the rest of the night. Only fragments. Flashing lights. The taste of iron. The feeling of floating, then falling, then silence. When I woke up, the sun was shining. The house was empty. The herd was gone. No carcasses. No signs of struggle. Just flattened grass and silence. I packed my things and left. Drove for hours, unable to think clearly. I don't remember the roads I took. I just remember the look on the gas station attendant's face when I stopped to buy water. She asked if I was okay. I told her I'd been working on a farm. She said I smelled like ozone. That was a year ago. Since then, I've tried to go back to normal life. Clinics, hospitals, smaller jobs. But the silence never leaves me. Sometimes I hear the hum again, through walls and elevators in my sleep. And when I close my eyes, I still see them. Not their bodies. Their thoughts. They're still watching me. And sometimes, late at night, I catch myself walking to the window looking up instinctively. But I don't see anything. Because they taught me not to. It's been 13 months now. I've moved 4 times, changed numbers, even switched continents. But it doesn't matter. No matter where I go, the silence finds me. Not the absence of sound, but that pressure, that weight behind the ears. Like the world is holding its breath, waiting. People around me don't notice. They say I look tired or lost in thought. Some think I'm suffering from PTSD. I let them believe that. It's easier than the truth. I stopped visiting farms. I stopped treating animals altogether. Something about their eyes, they know. I've seen dogs flinch when I enter a room. Horses refusing to step near me. A cat once clawed its way through a window just to get away. Whatever I brought back with me, whatever tether I carry, it is invisible. But animals sense it. Sometimes I think I hear them whisper when I'm asleep. A month ago, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a flash drive. On it was a single video file. No title, no metadata. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The footage showed an aerial view of farmland, somewhere cold, judging by the frost on the ground. Grainy, black and white, like surveillance footage from a satellite. For several minutes, nothing moved. Then a shape. Large. Round. Not flying, hovering. Completely silent. The footage flickered. When it returned, every single animal on the property, over 100, was lying flat. Not dead. Just motionless. Facing down. The last frame was a close-up of one of the cows. Its eyes were missing. Not gouged out, just gone. As if erased. I deleted the file. But the next morning it was back on my computer. 3 copies. 1 in every folder. That was when the lights in my apartment started failing. And the dreams returned. They're different now. Not memories. Not warnings. Instructions. They teach me how to write symbols I've never seen. How to draw maps of places that don't exist. How to hum frequencies I've never heard aloud. I wake up with nosebleeds. Burn marks on my fingertips. And sometimes traces of ash on my pillow. I stop trying to explain any of it. I just write it all down. Maybe that's why I'm telling you this now. Not as a warning, there's no point in that. If they want to be seen, they will be. If they want to take, they will take. Nothing you believe or disbelieve changes what's out there. I'm telling you because maybe, like me, you felt that pressure. Maybe you've seen a shadow pass overhead when there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Maybe your pets stare into corners too long. Maybe you've looked up, and something blinked back. You'll know when it starts. Your lights will flicker. Your reflection will distort. The stars will look wrong. And in the silence, you'll hear it, a faint hum like something ancient waking up. And then if you're lucky, you'll forget again. You'll go back to your life. But if you're not, you'll start to understand why the cattle never look up. Because they remember. Because they still see. Because they know what's watching. And now, so do you?